Good evening, friends, and welcome to evening prayer with the folks in Prince George, British Columbia, and Trinity United Church. Today is April the 19th, 2020. It's a day that for many of us will forever be remembered. Not just because it's another day living with COVID, but because of the mass shootings in Nova Scotia. Every evening at 8 p.m. we gather to name the realities of the day and to root ourselves in God's story. The idea being that by doing that, the challenges of the day, the hardships of the day, the things that bring us grief and anger and anxiety and fear, they decrease. Because we also name the things that bring us hope and peace and joy and love and compassion and understanding and empathy and justice, and ground ourselves in those things so that we don't lose sight of them, so that we just don't get stuck in the ashes and the what ifs and the if onlys of life. And then a mass shooting happens. A good friend of mine commented that it's crazy that the first thing that usurps a COVID-19 update on the evening news is the worst mass shooting in Canadian history since École Polytechnique. 17 dead and counting, including the shooter and Constable Heidi Stevenson. Communities across Nova Scotia grieving, even more fearful, locked behind even more closed doors. Communities with huge questions. Safety thrown up in the air as if that wasn't already the case with the COVID-19 virus. And we will ask questions for days. What happened? Could it have been prevented? Who knew what when? Why couldn't he have been stopped sooner? It's not just 17 families that are grieving. The folks who are injured. The RCMP still believes there will be more victims discovered. And we can't come together like we normally would. There won't be any mound of flowers and candles and teddy bears. There won't be any mass public vigils, any communal outpouring of grief. That will all have to wait. The grieving will be done in private and in isolation. And it runs the risk of being isolating. There really aren't words for what's happened. The picture of a broken heart has become synonymous with this day, popping up all over social media. in the afterglow of Easter, a mass shooting. Just when we think hope will win, that the curve is flattening, that the restrictions will start to be rolled back, we're shocked to our cores. The blue ribbon and the coat of arms for the RCMP. A reminder that someone has died in the line of duty. Sure, it's part of the job. Taking risks. No law enforcement person clocks in for their shift without some acknowledgement of the risk. And they do it day after day after day. And then one of them dies doing their job. Gives their life in service to others, trying to keep the public safe, trying to prevent more death, more violence, more people harmed and wounded, fractured and broken. This day will forever be remembered. Not because it was motivated by hate, but because it happened at all. How can we get to a place where life becomes so disposable? Where violence becomes a reasonable, logical response to whatever happened in the shooter's life. It's a hard day. Quite literally. A day unlike any other in Canadian history. And so we're called, as followers of Jesus, to gather together for prayer. And it's a lot harder today to name the hope and the peace and the joy and the love and the compassion and the justice. It's even harder when people want to play politics with the COVID-19 virus. Want to spin things for their own political gain, a couple of points in the polls somewhere amongst some hunted, appealing to some base that might support them in the next election. Seems doubly sad on a day like today. And so for the first time, I'm not going to name anything else. think it's important that we sit in this moment and that we acknowledge how horrible it is, how atrocious it is, how there really aren't words that even begin to describe it. We know we can do that as Christians, as followers of Jesus, because no matter how evil, no matter how dark, no matter how destructive this day will be remembered as, we know the light of Christ never goes out. And even in the midst of all that pain and grief and anger and uncertainty and redoubled fear, God is present there with us. And so this evening, we name that there have been at least 17 people shot and murdered across Nova Scotia. We acknowledge the pain that this event will cause on communities already hurting. We acknowledge the countless families that will be impacted by the events of this day. We acknowledge the RCMP people, not just the officers, not just the constables, but the RCMP family that will be impacted by today. We acknowledge that many of them will still have to get up tomorrow, put on the uniform, and sign in, show up, get in their cruisers, and respond. And so this day, we gather together for prayer. And we light our Christ candles because we need to be reminded that even now, the light of Christ burns within each of us. We need to place those hearts as physical, visual reminders that God's love knows no bounds. And it isn't only for the good times, happy, joyful, celebratory times. It's what sustains us when we don't have much else. And so we pray. God of creation, in you we know moments of trial and tribulation. We know the realities of nature, violence happens, that things are destroyed and new things emerge. We also know that you count those who are grieving, those who are sorrowful, those who know loss, as blessed. Be near us this evening as we absorb the realities of this day. Be near us as we ponder how there could be 17 people dead, 16 victims plus the shooter, the perpetrator. Be with our communities, particularly those in Nova Scotia, as they wrestle and grapple with the implications of this level of violence in their communities. Give us courage so that we don't become bitter. Help our anger be channeled into change. Ease our fears so we don't see a shooter around every corner. And we don't assume that every police vehicle is a fake. Help us be mindful of one another and how this level of trauma has a far, far reach. We pray for all the families who received notice that today their loved one died. We pray for Heidi Stevenson's family, her friends and her colleagues, those who take risks that we often downplay and ignore every time they put on the uniform and every time they respond to a radio call. We pray for those who are part of the shooters, family and friends and colleagues. Those who will be equally struck with questions. What if? If only. Did I? Could I? How could? Hold us all in your love. Help us grieve these events and yet not lose hope in the midst of our grief. Help us have a sense that you are there with us. And in the midst of it all, you uphold us and strengthen us, so that not even this breaks us. And in so doing, help us to remember the strengths of our communities, the resilience they offer. Help us to reach out to one another, to support one another, to not sugarcoat or be too quick to move away from this event. And yet not lose sight of the fact that we are Easter people. So grant us faith, O God, and courage, and compassion, and grace, and understanding. Give us wisdom. Give us compassion. Help us grieve. And be with us in this defining moment. Help us to be your people and to value the time, the impact that each of us has in this world, so that together we might be your people, your kingdom, your community. Amen. On behalf of the community at Trinity United Church in Prince George, British Columbia, we want very much for everyone who's been affected by this senseless violence to know that you are not alone. That the wider community is here to support you and care for you and help you grieve. We're also here to help you put the pieces back together again when that time comes. Every evening I end our time together for prayer with the phrases, be safe, be calm, and be community. I've been saying that since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps it's even more important to say it tonight. So friends, wherever you find yourself, and whatever the circumstances you find yourself in, from the folks at Trinity United Church in Prince George, British Columbia, please be safe, be calm, and be community. And if for whatever reason you can't say yes to those three things, then reach out. Let someone know. Ask for help. Ask for support. And if you can say yes to all those three things, and you think there's someone that you know who can't, then don't wait for them to call you. Call them. It's more important now than ever that we embody the very best of what it means to be followers of Jesus and expressions of the love of God in the world. And so as the shadows of this day lengthen, and the possibilities of tomorrow seem fleeting and far away, we hope you find a gentle rest. And that together we can find the energy, the wisdom, the courage, the compassion, the love, the peace, the hope, and even the joy to support one another and care for one another. Every evening, prayer. I hope you'll join us again tomorrow.